Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. I'm Mevish Khadim, Director Trade Development Authority of Pakistan, and I'm here to welcome you for this webinar regarding the exports of Pakistan to Sri Lanka. I welcome all our worthy guest speakers. We have with us the Honorable Consul General, Mr. Janateva with us. And then we have the Deputy Secretary, Foreign Trade, Mr. Fahad Raza, from joining us from the Ministry of Commerce, and our Trade and Investment Attaché, Ms. Asma Kamal, who's joined us from Colombo. So thank you all. We will start with the recitation of the Holy Quran first. Over to Naeem sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahus samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. Thank you, Naeem sir. Now I would just give a brief sequence of our webinar. First, I will request the worthy Director General TDAP Punjab, Ms. Nusrat Hussain Khan, for her opening remarks. After that, we will be having our guest speakers do their presentations. And after that, we will have the question and answer session. And all of you are requested to kindly put in your chat questions in the chat box, please, during the presentations, and we can answer them at the end of the session. Over to you, ma'am, please, the Director General TDAP Punjab, Ms. Nusrat Hussain Khan, for her opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Mahesh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I very warmly extend my welcome to our distinguished speakers of today, the Honorable Consul General of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. A very warm welcome, sir. Ms. Asma Kamal, Trade and Investment Attaché, Pakistan High Commission, Colombo. Very good to see you, Asma.
Thank you so much. Good to see you too.
Deputy Secretary, Foreign Trade, Asia and Pacific, Ministry of Commerce. Welcome, Fahad. And to all our worthy participants who joined us today for this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan and Sri Lanka's friendship goes a very long way back. We, from Pakistan's side, have always endeavored to develop a broad-based relationship with Sri Lanka, which not only covers trade and commerce, but also culture and defense matters. As an effort to further widen and deepen this trade relation, the Pakistan-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement was signed in August 2002 between the two governments, and it came into effect in July 2005. The terms of the PSFTA agreement granted 100% immediate concessions to both the countries on major export items. And we can safely say that the trade agreement between the two countries provided significant market share to both the countries. Pakistan's exports to Sri Lanka grew from US $155 million in 2004 to 5 to a very decent $316 million in 2019-20. Currently, our trade volumes stand at a positive $56 million. Pakistan's major exports to Sri Lanka include basmati rice, potatoes, woven fabric of cotton, portlet cement, and other woven fabric of cotton. This webinar, ladies and gentlemen, is with the intent to further deepen and highlight the scope of the Sri Lanka trade and to develop new opportunities for our exporters. On this note, I would also like to strongly urge our exporters that while TDAP is holding this series of webinars, they should also come forward and do their bit in getting us some tangible results in terms of exports. And for that, I would also urge our Pakistan High Commission in Colombo and also the teams which are sitting everywhere, not only in the country. We have on board the Honorable CG from the Sri Lankan side. So I think this is going to be a very, very positive step. We at Trade Development Authority of Pakistan continue to look forward to your cooperation, sir, Asma, and to our teams wherever they are sitting. And with the support of all of you, I believe that we can further deepen and strengthen our trade ties. On this note, I would like to thank you, all of you, once again for joining us today. And now I would request Ms. Navish to kindly formally open the webinar for the formal proceedings. Thank you very much, and here's hoping that this proves to be a very productive exercise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now, I would like to request our first speaker, the Honorable Consul General of Sri Lanka in Pakistan, Mr. Janadeva, who's graciously participating in this. And thank you so much for accepting our invitation at such a short notice, sir. He will be talking about the import policy of Sri Lanka and will also shed some light on the trade potential of Pakistan and Sri Lanka as well. Please, sir, over to you.
So, good morning to you all, and Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. First of all, I wish to thank the organizers of this event for granting us this opportunity to share some of our reflections and insights for the benefits of bilateral trade. So I think I can directly go to my presentation and start my presentation at the moment. So today's my presentation will be on the import policy of Sri Lanka, export opportunities for Pakistani businesses. Okay, I think my presentation will cover mostly the import policy of Sri Lanka, where the Pakistani businessmen can get the advantage to export their products and services to Sri Lanka and through Sri Lanka to various other destinations. So we will not cover any other things, mainly due to the constraint of times. The major focus will be on the import policy and the.
Hello.
Am I audible to all? Okay, okay.
Yes, sir. So please continue,
yes, okay.
please.
Yeah. Clear now, voice.
Okay, okay. So this is basic information about Sri Lanka. The land area is only 65,000 kilometers. The population is only 22 million around. There is a small population when you compare to other South Asian countries. 1/10 of Pakistan population nearly, and our GDP per capita is 4,102. Is 3 times of Pakistan population, Pakistan GDP per capita, and the structure of the economy is 57% services, industry is 27%, agriculture 7%, taxes 9%. So this is the basic information about the economy. Yeah, same. Yeah, GDP. Yeah. So now, why Sri Lanka is important for connecting east and west? Every ship which goes from east to west, west to east, that has to visit Sri Lanka. So therefore, it is in the middle of connecting east and west regions. So therefore, all the ships, whenever they want to visit the other end of the world, they'll have to go through Sri Lanka. We get an advantage of cargo transportation, very less cargo transportation compared to other destinations. Another one is the small country. Most of our products exports are high quality products, and it has a world reputation for quality products exported from Sri Lanka. Mostly in the garment sector, high-end garments brands are manufactured from Sri Lanka. Reliable and quality manufacturers. There are fraudulent practices in business are very minimum, and the government is also very much keen to remove all fraudulent practices in business relations with other partners and neighbors. And we have many free trade agreements which give a higher market access for Sri Lankan products or products manufactured in Sri Lanka. EU GSP, and there are other free trade agreements. We will see them in our following slides. And there are other free trade agreements are in the pipelines to be negotiated. Now, this is a high-performing economy because we have underwent so many troubles. Last 30 years, we had terrorism issues, and we have natural calamities. But in spite of all these things, our economy was very strong, and we have repaid all our loans, and our living is going high and high. Since we have a free education and free healthcare from kindergarten to university, postgraduate up to PhDs, the entire education is across the country granted free of charge. And whenever a student is entering into a university, each student is given a scholarship by the government. So, and this university admission is based on purely on merit. So we get the real cream of students into professionals categories, and these students are highly recognized in all over the world, and we get more than $6.5 billion as a revenue from professionals income. So we have a consumer capacity of Sri Lanka much higher than the other countries in the region, and we have a logistical hub in the South Asian region. Whatever I think Sri Lanka functions as a gateway to the entire South Asian region. So whatever product any other developed countries, if they want to supply to another South Asian region, so it's their ships can reach easily to Sri Lanka, and using the Sri Lankan gateway they are transporting to either India, China, Pakistan. So we will see them in detail. And this is in the shipping port, east-west shipping. So these are the our imports, total imports from our GDP percentage. Largest imports are from fuel. Fuel bill is the largest bills in our GDP. 12% of our GDP is spent on fuels. Second largest is machinery and equipment. Third one, textile. Fourth one, food and beverages. And fifth one, transport and services. These are the major imports, key imports to Sri Lanka. So most of the imports are from the following countries: 28% from India, another China 27.4%, and UAE 13.7%, mostly fuel bills, and US 4%, and Indonesia and Saudi Arabia. These are the leading importing countries. And what are the products we are highly import to Sri Lanka? Mainly petroleum and products, machineries, plastics, transportation equipment, edible oils, paper and paperboard, iron and steel, and tea. These are the major products we are importing from other countries. So, major imports from Pakistan. What we import from Pakistan is cotton, Portland cement, rice, medicaments, dyed fabrics, iron and steel, denim, apparels, beverages, spirits, and staple fibers. So our import policy of Sri Lanka. Now we will see what is the major contents of our import policy of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's main trade policy instrument is import tariff. Our import policy is managed through import tariffs. So we have adapted in 2017 WTO's new HS coding system in our tariff schedule. Apart from it, the major import tariff policies are governed by 4 bands. All the products, nearly 7,000 products are available in the HS system. Approximately 7,000 products are available in the HS system, and all the products are governed by 4 kinds of bands, import tariff bands. We will see them. So according to that, the other countries, whenever they are exporting to our products, they can classify it generally with their they can classify under which category their products can be taxed, or under which category of tariff their product can be included. So mainly, we have a basic raw materials 0%. So any country can export basic raw material to Sri Lanka 0%. And intermediate products 15%, finished products 30%, and semi-processed goods 5%. So these are the basic tariff bands Sri Lanka is implementing. Apart from it, these are the general basic, and we have been practicing these tariff bands for the last 15-20 years. So there is no any change the government has introduced in these tariff bands. So still it is in practice. So out of around 7,000 products range, we are practicing these 4 tariff bands. So any exporter can see whether this product is a basic raw material or semi-finished products or intermediate product. They can immediately understand what kind of tariff he will undergo when he exports the particular product to Sri Lanka. Apart from, I think mostly now at the moment, around 50% of the products are zero duty at the moment. So Sri Lanka was the first country liberalized the entire trade in 1977 in the region. Sri Lanka was the first country in the region, South Asian region, started unilateral liberalization of their economy. And we got a lot of benefits from the unilateral liberalization. Still, the present government, they continue the same policy of liberalizing the trade. So under these 4 categories, the entire imports are governed. So apart from it, Sri Lanka has done their preferential tariff agreements with certain countries in order to get a greater access to Sri Lankan products. So we can see, so this is the foundation of tariff system is based on these 4 bands. On it, we have given further tax incentives to the countries which are having a free trade agreement with Sri Lanka. So generally, there are some preferential trading agreement we have underwent. They are GSP, that is given by the developed countries to developing countries, generalized system of preferences to all the developed countries, and Indo-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, and Pakistan-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, and SAARC Preferential Trading Agreement, South Asian Free Trade Area, and Asia Pacific Trade Agreement, and EU GSP, and US IFA. So these agreements grants them more access from these 4 bands tariff, so that the countries whichever have done free trade agreement with Sri Lanka, they get a more greater access better than these 4 bands of tariff structure. So now we can see in detail the Indo-Sri Lanka agreement, how many products we have given, how many products we have given 100% duty. Nearly, I think according to the Pakistan Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, we have nearly 4,000 products are 100% duty. Entirely, I think 220 million population in Pakistan, so it's access to 220 million products. And similar way, each product has granted the access to the total population of in the area or in the region, and the greater amounts of products getting the market access at the zero duty. Similarly, we have negotiated and signed Sri Lanka Singapore FTA to get an access to ASEAN countries, ASEAN markets. So the entire ASEAN market, 647.45 million population, and 11 countries. EU GSP schemes. So we have duty-free access to 6,200 products out of 7,200 total products, and the total population is 508 million in 27 countries. So if we can sell our product to each population, so we have a greater population, we can get a market access to our greater amount of our products. So that is the rationale behind this free trade agreement. So this has given further market access to the products either manufactured from Sri Lanka or partly manufactured from Sri Lanka. We will see them in the same way. Regional APTA also, Sri Lanka is a member that has 2.3 billion population in 6 countries, and SAFTA 1.6 billion and SAFTA. So this has given greater access to the products from Sri Lanka. The main export partners, what are the countries Sri Lanka is exporting? The largest export partners are developed countries, and they attract more highly quality oriented products. US 17.7%, UK, China, Germany, and Afghanistan, and UAE and Spain. So we hardly export to South Asian region because the products manufactured in Sri Lanka are very quality. And so the other countries, whoever wants to send their product to reach these markets, they send their semi-finished goods to Sri Lanka, and they do the small process there, 35% of value addition, and they are reaching these markets through Sri Lanka. This is the advantage of other countries when they export to Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka also more and more encourage other countries to export to Sri Lanka. For instance, we have $370 million exports from Pakistan to Sri Lanka. Not even half of them are consumed by entire Sri Lankans. So more than half of them are directly exported by same Pakistani companies to other developed countries. I have met during my last 3 years of tenure in Pakistan, many of the Pakistan people, they are exporting their products to Sri Lanka, not to the final destination Sri Lanka. They are channeling through Sri Lanka to either US, UK, Canada, German markets. So they make use of Sri Lanka as a platform to get quality addition to their product. Final, we can see it in more detailed form in my other following slides, and they are sending them to various other countries. So Sri Lanka is using as a launching pad to export to various different countries. More than 50% of the products exported from at the moment, exported from Pakistan to Sri Lanka, are re-exported to developed countries. Either they do a final finishing or adding value to certain level, and they are re-exporting to either reaching the particular countries with a tariff less market access and quality image. They build up a quality image also. We can see them in the moment. So now, especially what the products exported from Pakistan are textiles, garments, bed linen, cotton, clothes, and yarn, and rice, and leather goods, sports, chemical manufacturers, and carpets and rugs. So these are the present exports to Sri Lanka from Pakistan. Now we have done, Pakistan, Sri Lanka has done agreement, as was mentioned in our opening remarks, in 2005. And under this, we can see what are the benefits at the moment for the exporters in Pakistan. Pakistan received 100% duty-free access on 102 tariff lines at the time of signing. So we have granted 100% duty-free access on 102 tariff lines at 6 digits level. So it can cover more products. When you come to a local tariff lines in 8 digits level, it can increase to further. So this has been granted at the time of signing. Then later, within the 5 years, the agreement granted further on existing tariff. First year at the time signing of the agreement 20%, then first year at the end of the first year 30%, then second year 40%, third year 60%, and then fourth year 80%, end of fifth year 100%. So I was told further 2,000 products have been granted already under this agreement duty free. But most of the tariff benefits are not known to the exporters. Recently, I come across a leading Pakistan businessman. They have been exporting a particular product, but they were not aware that particular product has been granted tariff benefits under the agreement. And they were last few years, they have been exporting by paying the tariff and all. So most of the Pakistan, if they get the tariff benefits and they can reach more population in Sri Lanka, the product can be exported to further to a few more countries because the cost of their trade will be low. So that then after meeting only, I explained to him they can go and apply for this PSFT certificates and they can get 10% tariff. They can get an exemption when they present this. So last few years, the particular company has been exporting to Sri Lanka and to Sri Lanka various countries, but they are paying 10% tariff. And also he was shocked, the particular CEO of the company was shocked that they were not aware. This was the case, I think, for the last many years. Many of the Pakistani exporters, they were not aware of the potential benefits of this PSFTA scheme. And where this agreement has 6,000 granted 6,000 metric ton of basmati rice under duty free, and we have except 697 tariff lines. All other products are under either zero duty or better than the normal duty, normal other most favored nation duties, better than the duties granted to other countries. So now what they need to two conditions, they need to either the products should be wholly obtained from Pakistan, or they can manufacture a small process 35% value addition either from Pakistan. They can import from Afghanistan, they can do a small packing in Pakistan and they can export. They are entitled. Either they can bring the product from China, they can do some value addition of 35%, they can export to Sri Lanka duty free, and from Sri Lanka they can export to various other countries. We'll see some of the exporters. I will share some experiences how the exporters are utilizing this PSFTA agreement to reach Canada, Australia, American markets and all. So these are the basic requirement to fulfill this exports under PSFTA. And these are the exportable products from Pakistan at the moment under this PSFTA agreements. So if any one of you are dealing with the similar kind of products, so you can explore the benefits of exporting to particular products, not only to Sri Lanka, and you can reach other destinations through Sri Lanka. So we will, I think, go in details in our following slides. So these are we have done small research recently from my office, and we have found these are the products. It has a potential for competitive by pricing and quality wise from Pakistan to Sri Lanka. So now at the moment, the successful exports to Sri Lanka, what are the sectors now they are successfully utilizing this free trade agreement to exports to Sri Lanka, and our tariff system and all, especially textile and garments. Many of the some of the garment exporters, they are manufacturing cotton towels and bed sheets and bed linen and all. They are taking tender orders from Canadian markets, hospitals, Canadian hospitals every year. They are, and Canadian and US and UK 5-star hotels hotel orders, and what they are doing, they are supplying to Sri Lanka rolls and all, and they do the cutting and packing in Sri Lanka, and these products are duty free under the PSFTA agreement, and then they export to Sri Lanka, and from Sri Lanka they are doing their packaging and all, and they are exporting to US market, Canadian market, and UK and EU market without any duty. And with the brand, with the new brand from Sri Lanka, they have a partner, or they have another office, a commercial office in Sri Lanka, and they do the partner, and so through that they get a duty-free access to those markets, because we have done free trade agreement with this countries, so they get a better, and they have a special brand, recognized brand now. Most of the leading brands, they have their sourcing office in Sri Lanka, Victoria's Secret, Marks and Spencer, Nike, Castro, H&M. So they have their sourcing. So Sri Lankan industry, garment industry, has become reputed for high brands exports. So under that same image, some of the bed linens and for the hotels, 5-star hotels especially in Canada, US and UK and Germany. Pakistan manufacturers, they send their products to Sri Lanka, and they have an agent there, and they do the packing and all, and they re-export to these countries. These are the most successful exports from Pakistan. Another one is leather products. I have met the leading leather manufacturers in Pakistan. He himself shared a very good story. Service, the shoe manufacturer. He visited for a holiday to Sri Lanka. He found there is a good workmanship in for finishing their products. Then he bought a small factory close to the Sri Lankan airport. Now he is sending for the last few years partly finished leather products, shoes and slippers to Sri Lanka. And they have a high-end craft. They are using the Sri Lankan high-end educated workforce to give a high-end finishing and do the packing. And now he is the supplier for UK Army, US Army. He himself told me last year I went in Lahore in his office. He himself told me one of the most successful venture they have gone to Sri Lanka, and they are channeling entire their exports to developed countries to Sri Lanka. Apart from it, there are many SMEs, small and medium industries. They are small scale exporters. They are sending their leather items, shoe items, handbags, and they do their assembling part in Sri Lanka, because the shoe items and all, when you finish it, there is a tax component there. So they send it by parts and they assemble it there, and they are selling it Sri Lanka, and they are exporting to other high-end markets from there. So there is another product, steel galvanized. The steel galvanized, one of the leading company, steel pipes manufacturing company. They are 70% of the exports were exported to Sri Lanka. Many of the entire airport was built through the galvanized pipes imported from Pakistan. All of our highways, they used Pakistan galvanized pipes. They have been doing export to Sri Lanka for the last many years. Now they have decided they can start a small manufacturing facility in Sri Lanka, and they can export to US market. So they told me they cannot export from Pakistan to US directly. They have an anti-dumping duties, various other duties. So now they have invested, they have planned to invest $200 million project in Sri Lanka. Now they have invested already 100 million. They have identified the land and machineries are ready. So now it's also very successful export venture from Pakistan. They are sending a semi-finished galvanized pipes to Sri Lanka, and they will do the final packing, and they will export 70% of their manufacturing units to US markets. And they have signed the BOI agreement with our president last year. He have visited Islamabad. They have met the president, and subsequently they went to Sri Lanka and signed the BOI Board of Investment agreement in Sri Lanka. So this will be another successful venture from exporters from Pakistan. There's another, recently we have gotten inquiries for fish from Pakistan. They are compared to the fish prices in Pakistan much lower than Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan fish is not enough for Sri Lanka itself, but our major export, one of the major export is also fish and fish products. Mainly we are exporting to Italian, EU and UK market. So now we got an order from Sri Lanka to Pakistan to export fish. They want to export to Singapore and UK and EU market. Probably that will also become a very promising exports from Pakistan. So now all these days we have only targeted Sri Lankan consumers. So I have gone through many of our export statistics from Pakistan for the last few years. And not even 50% of the exports are consumed by Sri Lankan itself. Mostly they are re-exported to other high-end destination. Most of our exports, when you analyze our Sri Lanka's, the largest 50 exports are reaching focused for high-end market, high-end developed market. So then these Pakistan exporters, if they want to reach a high-end market, the easiest and most cost-effective ways they can export to Sri Lanka, and they can have a 35% of value addition, either repacking or some final. We have a very highly educated workforce, and so they can make use of them, and then they can re-export to the developed countries by establishing their own reputational brand. This way, Pakistan can be a successful export partner for Sri Lanka. So thank you very much. I hope I could take some question and answers if you are interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a detailed and informative presentation. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions. First of all, people are very keen to know when is Sri Lanka opening up for them after the COVID? And secondly, they want to know the scope of sporting goods and sports bags, if that has a potential to be exported to Sri Lanka. Please, sir. Your views on it, sir.
Yeah, opening of Sri Lanka now, I think we have got some issues with regard to second wave of COVID-19. Now the government is trying to organize it, the controlling mechanism and all. And once it is over, I think they have a plan to open for tourism and businesses. So they have a plan to open for. Because we cannot survive without trade and tourism, because our more than $6.5 billion we get from tourism, and another $6 billion we are getting from overseas remittance from our professional workers in various countries and all. So these two sectors are highly affected. Tourism sector, and there are a lot of industries related to tourism in Sri Lanka, food industry, and so they are also highly affected. So we cannot go on closing our airports for a long period of time. So now almost 8-9 months we have closed down. Now government now they have decided to open it once they organize, once they control the inner COVID spreading, and they have already put forward a plan for tourism and all, but subsequently we got second wave and all. Then the government is now at the moment focusing on controlling the second wave of this one. So once it is over, I think in between, I think businessmen they have organized some business travels for individual businessmen also. If they are interested, they can make through our missions. They can get an appointment and assistance to reach the business, their partners in Sri Lanka. That it can be individual cases by case. They can permit.
Right, sir. Thank you very much. So the second query was about the potential of sports goods.
Sports goods. Now I think we got a new government recently, and they are one of the priorities sports economy. Sports economy. They want to give a priority for sports, and through sports develop the economy. So now they want to develop different stadiums. They want to develop different international matches and all. So then they want to give youngsters for more enthusiasm on sports activities and all. So I think from this year onwards, the sports will be in a high priority in the government agenda. I think they will have a good market for sports goods. But good market, and more than that, they can see whether they can market for sports goods from Sri Lanka to other developed countries. They can do other branding, and they can do some kind of a finishing. Now, the service, the shoe company, he shared me. He has gone to Sri Lanka for a tourism visit, and he found there are good workmen to go for a high finishing, and he bought 2 companies, factories in Sri Lanka, and now he is sending all partly finished leather items to Sri Lanka, and now they are very successful exporting. He himself told me, shared this information and all. So similar way, the sports items, especially if they want to catch the developed countries' high-end markets, the margin will be very high. Sri Lankans exporters, they are not very much interested in South Asian markets. Our intra-trade within South Asian region is not more than 3%, not more than 3%, because the margins are less and the efforts, and they cannot develop. So now most of the companies are focusing on developed countries, and so similar way, Pakistanis can make use of that trend, and reach. Now we have some exporters in linens, bed linens, and teddy towels and all. So they are very highly successful. Every year they take the tenders from Canadian market, US market, and UK market. Apart from they supply to many five-star hotels, but they are supplying through Sri Lanka. They are made in Sri Lanka. The product goes as a made, but the entire product is manufactured and from supplied through Pakistan. I have met every sometimes once in 2 months I meet them. They come to my office and they share their difficulties and all. So similarly, the sports goods also manufacturers also look for a high-end market with a high margin of profits and stable, sustainable business exports and all, so they can explore that market and all.
Right. So just one last question, sir. Is there a specific B2B site for Sri Lanka? The participants want to know whether they have a specific B2B site.
No, we have not, but we can. If there is an interest, we can. We can do it. So far, we have not ventured into a B2B. Send us some interest, and we share it with the particular agency in Sri Lanka. They will also share among the business community, and if there's interest, they will communicate with them directly. And if they further need some assistance, some information, regulatory level, tax, and if they recently we got another businessman. He was exporting a particular product, but he was not aware there is a 10% tax benefit under PSFTA. He was highly shocked. So most of the Pakistanis are not aware of the benefits, and it's one of the most beneficial agreement we have. I gone through. I have compared the Pakistan-China agreement. I have compared the Pakistan-Sri Lanka agreement. Most of the deeper tariff benefits granted under the Pakistan-Sri Lanka free trade agreement. We have signed it 2005, but recently we have ventured into. But still, we have a deeper benefits and broader perspective, covering a broader area of products range. So because this agreement was not done on a give and take, it's done on built on our mutual bilateral relationship. So both of us have given the best to our best partners.
Right, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now I would like to request Mr. Fahad Raza, Deputy Secretary, Foreign Trade, Asia and Pacific, who's joined us from the Ministry of Commerce, Islamabad, to for his presentation on the opportunities that are available for under the Pakistan-Sri Lanka FTA that sir was just referring to. So over to you, sir. Mr. Talha, can you kindly stop sharing the screen, please, so we can continue with the next presentation? So Fahad, please, you may start, please.
Thank you very much, Mavish, and thank you very much to Trade Development Authority of Pakistan for giving us this opportunity of talking about the opportunities presented by Pakistan-China FTA. Most of what this FTA has to offer has already been covered by His Excellency, the Council General of Sri Lanka. But I would, and most of what I'll say may be a repetition of what has already been said. So in order to make this presentation a little different and for the audience to understand it a little better, I'll do it in Urdu, and I'll apologize the Council General for doing it and I'll be mixing up things also for better understanding. Mavish, I hope the screen is clear to everybody.
We don't have. Have you shared your screen? Abhi to nahi aa rahi. If you could kindly do it again, please.
Okay.
जी, it's clear, please.
अच्छा जी, मैं ब्रीफली स्टार्ट करूंगा श्रीलंका की फैक्ट शीट से। पॉपुलेशन 21.803 मिलियन है, और जैसे कौंसल जनरल साहब ने बात की है, यहाँ पे तकरीबन पिछले कुछ साल में तकरीबन 2 मिलियन से 2.5 मिलियन के करीब टूरिस्ट हैं जो कि हर साल विजिट करते हैं श्रीलंका को। जीडीपी 84 बिलियन डॉलर्स की है, एक्सपोर्ट्स अराउंड 11.741। ये हमारा विट्स का डेटा है जी 2018 का। imports 21.316 बिलियन डॉलर। ट्रेड बैलेंस इनका नेगेटिव में है जी, पाकिस्तान की तरह ही। थोड़ा सा बैकग्राउंड है जी एफटीए का। ये पाकिस्तान का पहले एफटीए था किसी भी मुल्क के साथ, और ये 2002 में हमने साइन किया था, 2005 में ऑपरेशनलाइज हो गया था। अच्छा, जैसे काउंसिल जनरल साहब बात कर रहे थे कि ये इट्स अ डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ एफटीए कंपेयर टू द अदर एफटीएस दैट पाकिस्तान हैज, बिकॉज इसमें जो अप्रोच थी दैट वाज ऑफ नो कंसेशन लिस्ट, यानी एक कुछ आइटम्स थे जो कि नो कंसेशन लिस्ट में डाल दिए गए थे और बाकी तमाम ट्रेड ओपन कर दी गई थी। यानी तकरीबन 90% ऑफ द ट्रेड हमारी जो है विद श्रीलंका वो ओपन थी, टैरिफ लाइंस जो थी वो ओपन थी फॉर ट्रेड। और सिर्फ कुछ एक लिस्ट थी जो कि मैं आगे डिस्क्राइब भी करूंगा, डिस्कस भी करेंगे उसे, वो नेगेटिव लिस्ट में थी, यानी उन टैरिफ लाइंस के ऊपर एमएफएन स्टेटस के ऊपर जो नॉर्मल टैरिफ है वो अप्लाई करता है। और ये वाहिद एफटीए है पाकिस्तान का जिसमें पाकिस्तान का ट्रेड सरप्लस भी है। बाकी तमाम एफटीएस के अंदर हम डेफिसिट में हैं। और अच्छा, अब ये जो नो कंसेशन लिस्ट की मैं बात कर रहा था, ये अब श्रीलंका की तरफ से 697 प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जहाँ पे हमारे एक्सपोर्टर्स को जनरल ड्यूटी पे करनी पड़ती है, यानी एमएफएन रेट के ऊपर ही ड्यूटी पे करनी पड़ती है। इसमें हमारी 102 टैरिफ लाइंस थी जो कि इमिडिएटली एफटी की थी, यानी उन्हें फ़ौरन ही ज़ीरो कर दिया गया था 2005 में जब ये ऑपरेशनलाइज हुआ। बाकी टैरिफ लाइंस जो हैं वो ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम ज़ीरो हुई, माँ सिवाय वो टैरिफ लाइंस जो कि नो कंसेशन लिस्ट में थी या कोटा जिसके ऊपर कोटा था, यानी टैरिफ रेट कोटाज वाली लाइंस के अलावा बाकी तमाम लाइंस 2010 में आफ्टर अ पीरियड ऑफ 5 इयर्स ज़ीरो हो गई थी। अच्छा, अब ये टैरिफ रेट कोटास जो हैं श्रीलंका में, ये हमारे कुछ प्रोडक्ट्स पे हैं जिसमें बासमती राइस है जहाँ पे 6000 मेट्रिक टन हर साल फ्रॉम जनवरी टू दिसंबर ये कोटा इशू किया जाता है। नॉर्मली हमारा इसमें कभी प्रॉब्लम नहीं हुआ एक्सेप्ट फॉर लास्ट ईयर व्हेन पाकिस्तान फेस्ड some problems with the export of rice to Sri Lanka, and this procedure is now being streamlined, that the episode that happened last year is not repeated for coming years. और इस पे अस्मा जो है वो मज़ीद भी आप पे बात करेंगे, बिकॉज फॉर द लास्ट few months मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स और जो हमारी TIU हैं वहाँ पे वी हैव बीन वर्किंग वेरी हार्ड ताकि ये जो एक एपिसोड लास्ट ईयर राइस में हुआ ये रिपीट ना हो। पोटैटोज में 1000 मेट्रिक टन पर ईयर का कोटा है हमारा विच इज़ ड्यूटी फ्री, और ये साल में 2 दफ़ा जी इशू होता है। अब पाकिस्तान में जी 541 टैरिफ लाइंस थी जिनको हमने प्रोटेक्ट किया था। ये कंपैरिजन है, लास्ट स्लाइड और ये स्लाइड जो है ये कंपैरिजन है कि हमने क्या ऑफर किया और श्रीलंका ने हमें क्या ऑफर किया। तो 697 टैरिफ लाइंस थी जिसको श्रीलंका ने प्रोटेक्ट किया, और 541 टैरिफ लाइंस थी जो कि हमारे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट थी, जहां हम अपनी डोमेस्टिक इंडस्ट्री को प्रोटेक्ट करना चाहते थे, इनको हमने प्रोटेक्ट किया। 206 टैरिफ लाइंस पाकिस्तान ने राइट अवे 2005 में ओपन कर दी थी। अब पाकिस्तान का जो टैरिफ स्ट्रक्चर है या जो हमारी उनके साथ नेगोशिएशंस हुई इन टैरिफ के ऊपर वो थोड़ा सा मुख्तलिफ है जो कि श्रीलंका ने पाकिस्तान को ऑफर किया। यानी वहाँ पे हमारे पास एक नेगेटिव लिस्ट है या जो नो कंसेशन लिस्ट है, और एक वो है जहाँ पे हमने ज़ीरो टैरिफ हो गया, और एक टैरिफ रेट कोटा था। पाकिस्तान में जो हमने ऑफर किया उनको, इसमें एक मार्जिन ऑफ प्रेफरेंस का एडिशनल एक लाइन थी। मार्जिन ऑफ प्रेफरेंस ये है जी कि जिस तरह एक फ़र्ज़ करते हैं कि हम एक MFN रेट है विच इज़ 50%, और यहाँ पे हम देखते हैं कि अपैरल्स के अंदर हमने 35% फॉर एग्जांपल उनको एक मार्जिन ऑफ प्रेफरेंस दिया है, विच वुड एक्चुअली मीन कि 35% ऑफ द 50% हमने उनको प्रेफरेंस दिया, यानी द एक्चुअल रेट वुड कम टू अराउंड 17%. तो ये अगर हमने 50% फॉर एवरीबडी, इट विल बी 17% फॉर श्रीलंका इफ द इंपोर्ट्स इफ दे एक्सपोर्ट एनीथिंग टू पाकिस्तान. अच्छा, अब ये जो टैरिफ रेट कोटा है, जिस तरह हमने वहाँ पे देखा कि पाकिस्तान को बासमती राइस और पोटैटोज में वहाँ श्रीलंका में मिला, तो पाकिस्तान ने टी और अपैरल में टैरिफ रेट कोटा अप्लाई किया है. 10,000 मेट्रिक टन जो है वो ड्यूटी फ्री आ सकता है फ्रॉम श्रीलंका 6 टैरिफ लाइंस के ऊपर. अच्छा, यानी टी के ऊपर तमाम टैरिफ लाइंस आर नॉट ओपन है. आगे जाके हम देखेंगे कुछ टैरिफ लाइंस ऐसी हैं जो कि एक्सक्लूजन लिस्ट में पाकिस्तान ने डाली हैं. अपैरल जो है ये इसकी 21 टैरिफ लाइंस हैं और ईच टैरिफ लाइन में 2 लाख पीसेस से ज़्यादा इंपोर्ट नहीं किया जा सकता. यानी इस अगर आपने 35% मार्जिन ऑफ प्रेफरेंस इंजॉय करना है इफ़ यू आर इम्पोर्टिंग फ्रॉम श्रीलंका, तो वो 2 लाख मैक्सिमम ईच टैरिफ लाइन के ऊपर आप पीसेस इंपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. अगर आप इससे ऊपर जाएंगे तो फिर MFN रेट अप्लाई करेगा. इसी तरह ये जो हमारी नीचे टैरिफ लाइंस हैं, सेरामिक टाइल्स हैं, टेबल वेयर, किचन वेयर है, रेफ्रिजरेटर, फ्रीजर्स हैं, इनकी लाइंस के ऊपर 20% मार्जिन ऑफ प्रेफरेंस है MFN के ऊपर. फिर ये बेटल लीव है जिसके ऊपर ओरिजिनली 35% मार्जिन ऑफ प्रेफरेंस दिया गया था, अब ये 72% मार्जिन ऑफ प्रेफरेंस है, यानी विच इज़ क्लोज टू यानी वेरी लिटिल टैक्स नाउ. अच्छा, ये एक आपको दिखाता है कि प्री FTA और पोस्ट FTA दोनों कंट्रीज ने कैसा अपनी एक्सपोर्ट को इम्प्रूव किया या इम्प्रूव नहीं कर पाए हैं. तो ये अगर ब्लू लाइन जो है ये पाकिस्तान की एक्सपोर्ट हैं और ये जो ऑरेंज लाइन है दैट इज इंपोर्ट फ्रॉम श्रीलंका. तो पाकिस्तान स्टार्टेड ऑफ विद $155 मिलियन की एक्सपोर्ट टू श्रीलंका, और जो कि हमारी $331 मिलियन तक गई है 2010-11 में, विच इज़ द बेस्ट ईयर फॉर पाकिस्तान एक्सपोर्ट टू श्रीलंका. फिर हम ये 2013-14 से 2016-17 तक हमारी एक्सपोर्ट्स जो थी डाउनहिल थी, और ये जनरली इज़ द पीरियड जहाँ पे पाकिस्तान की एक्सपोर्ट टू द वर्ल्ड आल्सो ड्रॉप डाउन. तो ये वो फिनोमेना है जो कि यहाँ पे हमें नज़र आता है इन श्रीलंका आल्सो. इट स्टार्टेड टू मूव अप अगेन, और ये 2018-19 में $316 मिलियन की हमने एक्सपोर्ट की है. अब 2019-20 का अगर आप ग्राफ में देखेंगे तो इट हैज स्टार्टेड टू डिप अगेन, बट ये फिनोमेना जो है ये ज़्यादा रिलेट करता है बिकॉज ऑफ द कोविड सिचुएशन. और इसमें कुछ हमारे आइटम्स हैं जो कि जैसे वीट है जो कि श्रीलंका में जनरली जाता है, बट दिस ईयर बिकॉज ऑफ कोविड आपको पता है कि हम लोगों की तरफ से कुछ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस लगा दी गई थी फूड सिक्योरिटी की वजह से. और ऐसे ही अनियंस हैं जो कि हमारा अच्छा प्रोडक्ट है वहाँ के लिए, वहाँ पे भी हमने रिस्ट्रिक्शंस लगा दी थी बिकॉज ऑफ फूड सिक्योरिटी रीजंस. फिर हमारे आर्टिकल्स ऑफ अपैरल हैं जो कि एक अच्छा आइटम है पाकिस्तान का एक्सपोर्ट में, और टॉप 3-4 एक्सपोर्ट्स के अंदर आते हैं आर्टिकल्स ऑफ अपैरल. और क्योंकि और अगर आप श्रीलंका की मार्केट को देखेंगे तो श्रीलंका की मार्केट इज आल्सो एक्सपोर्ट ओरिएंटेड इन टर्म्स ऑफ अपैरल, तो इट्स वेरी कंपेटिटिव मार्केट आल्सो. तो हमारी तरफ से रॉ मटेरियल और फैब्रिक काफ़ी डिफरेंट टाइप्स का श्रीलंका में जाता है. अब क्योंकि श्रीलंका भी हिट हुआ इससे कोविड की वजह से, एंड देयर इंडस्ट्री अपैरल इंडस्ट्री क्लोज डाउन, तो हमारी एक्सपोर्ट ऑफ दीज फैब्रिक मटेरियल्स ड्रॉप्ड इन श्रीलंका, जिसकी वजह से ये फिर इम्पैक्ट थोड़ा सा आया. बट स्टिल वी डिड अ ग्रेट जॉब के $300 मिलियन $301 मिलियन की हमने एक्सपोर्ट कर ली. इंपोर्ट को अगर आप देखें तो श्रीलंका का पैटर्न जो है वो एक्चुअली पोस्ट FTA वो उसका फ़ायदा नहीं उठा सके जैसे प्रॉब्ली उठाया जा सकता है. यानी $71 मिलियन $72 मिलियन की एक्सपोर्ट थी फ्रॉम श्रीलंका इनटू पाकिस्तान, और over the period of time it has remained stable kind of. और last year 2019-20 was $59 मिलियन की एक्सपोर्ट रही है. So this is something that probably the Sri Lankan exporter have to look into कि कैसे पाकिस्तान की एक बड़ी मार्केट है जिसको एक्सप्लोर किया जा सकता है. अच्छा, ये एक इंटरेस्टिंग स्लाइड है जी. ये प्री और पोस्ट FTA हम जनरली मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स में और अपनी ट्रेड पॉलिसी में वी वांट कि हमारी जो एक्सपोर्ट बास्केट है वो बढ़ जाए और हमारी एक्सपोर्ट बेस जो है वो इन्हांस हो. तो ये FTA जो श्रीलंका का है, यहाँ पे हमें ये चीज़ प्रैक्टिकली होती नज़र आती है यानी 2004-5 में लेफ्ट के टेबल में आप देख सकते हैं कि हमारे जो आर्टिकल्स थे ये श्रीलंका में जा रहे थे। 2019-20 में हमने तकरीबन ये नए आइटम्स ऐड किए हैं जो कि बड़े सब्सटेंशियल एडिशन है। जैसे पोर्टलैंड सीमेंट है, ये अभी इसके ऊपर अस्मा भी बात करेंगे, हमें कुछ थोड़े से इश्यूज भी आए और अस्मा ने बहुत अच्छा काम किया और श्रीलंका में हम दोबारा से अपनी मार्केट हमने रीगेन भी कर ली जहाँ पे कोई हमें थोड़े प्रॉब्लम्स फेस करने पड़ रहे थे। अनियंस, गार्लिक, पोटैटोज़ की बहुत अच्छी मार्केट डेवलप हुई है वहाँ पे। इसी तरह मेज़ की और निटेड और बेड लिनन की हमारी बहुत अच्छी मार्केट इस्टेब्लिश हुई है श्रीलंका में ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम। तो यानी हमने अपनी मार्केट डाइवर्सिफिकेशन भी की है और वहाँ पे हमने अपने प्रोडक्ट्स भी नए इंट्रोड्यूस करवाए। अच्छा, ये पाकिस्तान का जी एक्सपोर्ट है जो मैं पहले बात कर रहा था, लास्ट स्लाइड में भी पोर्टलैंड सीमेंट है, हमारे क्लिंकर्स हैं जो काफ़ी बड़ी एक्सपोर्ट अब शुरू है श्रीलंका को। फिर ये हमारे वुवन फैब्रिक है, ये काफ़ी सारी लाइंस आपको इसके अंदर नज़र आएंगी जो टेक्सटाइल्स की हैं। तो फिर अनियंस हैं हमारे जो तीसरे नंबर के $26 मिलियन की एक्सपोर्ट है। पोटैटोज़ हैं। फिर अब ये जो अगर आप एग्री का सेक्टर भी देखें तो यहाँ पे अनियंस हैं, पोटैटोज़ हैं, आगे जाके आपको राइस भी और मेज़ भी नज़र आ रहा है, कॉर्न नज़र आ रही है, जो कि काफ़ी बड़ी अच्छी मार्केट वहाँ पे एग्री की आपको नज़र आ रही है, जो एक्सपोर्ट हो भी रही हैं। मेडिकमेंट्स की किसी ने बात की थी, क्वेश्चन के अंदर भी किसी ने पूछा हुआ था फार्मास्यूटिकल की। तो यहाँ पे ये तकरीबन $20 मिलियन की जी 3004, 3005 और 6 में तकरीबन मिला के 22 मिलियन डॉलर की एक्सपोर्ट पाकिस्तान कर रहा है वहाँ पे। ये जी एक्सपोर्ट कमोडिटीज़ 2004 एंड 5 की हैं। जैसे पहले मैं बात कर रहा था कि हमने कुछ चीज़ें ऐड की हैं और इम्प्रूव किया है। तो अगर आप इस चीज़ को देखेंगे तो आपको नज़र आएगा कि ज़्यादातर जो पोर्शन हमारा जा रहा था वहाँ पे वो पहले टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर ही हमारा रिप्रेजेंट हो रहा था, बट हमने अब ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ टाइम उसको इम्प्रूव कर लिया। अच्छा, यहाँ पे ये एक हमारी जी जो जिसको हम ये हैंड सैनिटाइजर्स के अंदर भी यूज़ कर रहे हैं, यू कॉल दैट इथाइल अल्कोहल, इसकी काफ़ी अच्छी मार्केट डेवलप हो गई थी श्रीलंका में, बट लास्ट ईयर जो है हमारे ऑर्डर्स जो हैं वो देवर शिफ्टेड टू अदर डेस्टिनेशंस, तो श्रीलंका में थोड़ा सा ड्रॉप आया, बट आई एम श्योर कि वो बाउंस बैक कर जाएंगे हम दोबारा। अच्छा जी, ये हमारी इंपोर्ट्स हैं जी। ये टॉप इंपोर्ट्स हैं श्रीलंका की फ्रॉम द वर्ल्ड। अच्छा, इसमें जो आपको ब्लैक में नज़र आ रही हैं दीज आर, ये बाकी तमाम तो हैं जो कि इंपोर्ट्स वो कर रहे हैं। ब्लू के अंदर आपको वो नज़र आ रही हैं जहाँ पे पाकिस्तान भी रिप्रेजेंट हो रहा है। तो यानी अगर टॉप 3 में आप देखें तो मेडिकमेंट्स जो हैं ये श्रीलंका की टॉप इंपोर्ट्स फ्रॉम द वर्ल्ड में हैं, और पाकिस्तान भी इसमें अपना शेयर, जैसे मैंने लास्ट स्लाइड्स में आपको दिखाया, तो पाकिस्तान से भी एक्सपोर्ट्स हो रही हैं इनकी। इसी तरह सेमी फिनिश प्रोडक्ट्स ऑफ आयरन एंड नॉन अलॉय स्टील, ये उनकी मेजर इंपोर्ट्स में है और पाकिस्तान भी यहाँ पे रिप्रेजेंट हो रहा है। इसी तरह फैब्रिक है, निटेड फाइबर्स हैं, कॉटन वूल है, ये एक्सपोर्ट हो रही है और रिप्रेजेंट हो रही है वहाँ पे। पोर्टलैंड सीमेंट के और सीमेंट क्लिंकर्स की मार्केट है, पाकिस्तान भी वहाँ पे रिप्रेजेंट हो रहा है। इसी तरह राइस जो है उनकी टॉप इंपोर्ट्स में आता है और पाकिस्तान की भी वहाँ पे हैं। अब ये दरमियान में आप देख सकते हैं कि गोल्ड और गोल्ड प्लेटेड प्लेटिनम, यहाँ पे हमें मार्केट एक्सेस है भी नहीं, यानी ये वो एक्सक्लूजन लिस्ट का प्रोडक्ट भी है, यहाँ पे पाकिस्तान को एक्सक्लूजन है। मैं नेक्स्ट स्लाइड के अंदर डिस्कस भी करता हूँ आपसे। ये वो प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जिसके अंदर मार्केट एक्सेस हमें ग्रांट की गई है। ये काउंसिल जनरल साहब भी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं और आपसे शेयर कर चुके हैं, तो मैं टाइम नहीं लेता इसके ऊपर। ये मार्केट एक्सेस है जो कि हमने श्रीलंका को ग्रांट की है इन चीज़ों में। अच्छा, ये पोटेंशियल सेक्टर्स हैं, कुछ प्रोडक्ट्स और सर्विसेज हैं जहाँ पे मार्केट हमारी वहाँ पे श्रीलंका के अंदर अच्छी हम मज़ीद भी एक्सप्लोर कर सकते हैं। वो लेंटिल्स, मेज, डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स, फ्रूट्स, अनियंस, क्योंकि कुछ हमारे फ्रूट्स और वेजिटेबल्स हैं जो मैं नेक्स्ट स्लाइड में शेयर करूंगा आपसे, जो जिनके ऊपर हमें मार्केट एक्सेस नहीं है। मार्केट एक्सेस नहीं है मुराद ये नहीं हमारी वहाँ पे प्रेफरेंशियल मार्केट एक्सेस नहीं है, मार्केट एक्सेस तो है डेफिनेटली, वो यदि हम MFN बेसिस पे ही जा रहे हैं वहाँ पे। इसी तरह राइस है, कॉटन, डेनम, सीमेंट एंड सीमेंट प्रोडक्ट्स, फार्मास्यूटिकल, रेस्टोरेंट फ्रेंचाइजेस। अस्मा इसके ऊपर आप पे बात करेंगे बिकॉज शीज इन श्रीलंका तो ज़्यादा बेहतर तरीके से आपको एक्सप्लेन भी कर सकती हैं, और IT सर्विसेज की अच्छी मार्केट है वहाँ पे। अच्छा, कुछ ये इश्यूज थे वहाँ पे जो श्रीलंका में फेस कर रहे थे हम लोग पिछले कुछ टाइम से, क्योंकि ये एक राइस के अंदर हमें ख़ास तौर पे और सीमेंट के अंदर कुछ इश्यूज हमें फेस करने पड़े हैं वहाँ पे रीसेंट टाइम्स के अंदर। और मोस्टली ये है कि क्योंकि एक वॉलेटाइल इकोनॉमी है इन अ वे कि ये अभी जैसे ही हमें कोविड की सिचुएशन आई है वहाँ पे हमें प्रॉब्लम्स फ़ौरन फेस करने पड़ते हैं, और जो गवर्नमेंट है वो थोड़ी सी इंट्रोवर्ट हो जाती है इन अ वे टूवर्ड ट्रेड रिस्ट्रिक्टिव इन अ मैनर। तो जिसकी वजह से फिर ये, बट फिर भी वी हैव बीन डूइंग अ ग्रेट जॉब इन श्रीलंका। और ख़ास तौर पे ये जो राइस के अंदर हमें आया, इसके अंदर थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम था, फिर सेस जो था वो काफ़ी इंक्रीज़ किया टू प्रोटेक्ट द इम्पोर्ट्स, बट वो भी फिर हमने सीमेंट के अंदर और क्लिंकर्स के अंदर उनको रिजॉल्व हो गए हैं। ये कुछ प्रोडक्ट्स हैं जी जो हमारे एक्सपोर्ट्स हो रहे हैं और जो हम इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं वहाँ से। इसके अंदर फाइबर बोर्ड है जो हम इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, नेचुरल रबर है वहाँ से आ रहा है, इसी तरह बॉटल्स हैं, फ्लास्क एंड जार्स एंड पॉट्स। ये यानी क्योंकि ओवरऑल हमारी इंपोर्ट्स हैं ही कम श्रीलंका से, तो ये बहुत ज़्यादा क्वांटिटीज़ के अंदर या वैल्यूज़ के अंदर नहीं आ रहा वहाँ से, बट स्टिल दीज आर द आइटम्स जो हम वहाँ से इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं। बहुत शुक्रिया जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच अगेन। और मैं माजरत भी चाहूँगा जी कि मैं आई विल नॉट बी एबल टू कंटिन्यू विद दिस बिकॉज हमारी एक और जापान की मीटिंग जो है विच इज़ अंडर वे, और मैं वहीं से मीटिंग से उठ के यहाँ पे ज्वाइन किया था। आई वुड अगेन लाइक टू थैंक ट्रेड डेवलपमेंट अथॉरिटी ऑफ पाकिस्तान लाहौर, जिन्होंने ये मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स को मौका दिया है कि हम आप लोगों के साथ बैठें और आपसे ये चीज़ें शेयर कर लें। मेरा ईमेल आईडी जो है वो TDAP से आपको मिल जाएगा। आपके काफ़ी सारे क्वेश्चंस हैं जो मैंने देखे थे, जो कि टैरिफ लाइंस के हवाले से हैं कि हमारी एक्सपोर्ट कितनी है और इंपोर्ट्स हम श्रीलंका से क्या करें, या टैरिफ स्ट्रक्चर क्या है। मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा TDAP को कि वो काइंडली तमाम क्वेश्चंस जो आप समझते हैं कि मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ कॉमर्स को आंसर करने चाहिए वो हमें भिजवा दें, और हम इंशाल्लाह एज सून एज पॉसिबल उनका रिप्लाई आपको भिजवा देंगे। थैंक यू वेरी मच जी।
Thank you so very much, Sir Fahad. Thank you for joining us and your time as well. Thank you.
थैंक यू।
ये जी फहद साहब का मैंने ईमेल एड्रेस शेयर कर दिया चैट बॉक्स में, so anyone who has a query for him, they can email him on it. Thank you, sir. Now to continue with our webinar, I would like to request Ms. Asma Kamal, who is our Trade and Investment Attaché in the High Commission of Pakistan, Colombo. She will now be talking about analyzing the bilateral trade as well as talking about the potential of export that exists. These topics have already been covered in like थोड़े से तो कवर हो गए, बट डिटेल में मिस असमा है आपको बताएंगी, और एट द एंड ऑफ द सेशन वी विल बी टेकिंग क्वेश्चंस so that she can answer them for all of you. Over to you, Asma.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mevish. It's a pleasure being here and teaming up with TDAP Lahore again, and it's an absolute honor. Thank you to Ms. Nudrat for leading in organizing this seminar, and I am really grateful to be given a chance to share my experience. I'll try to use English and Urdu both for convenience of all. Thank you to His Excellency, the Consul General, and Mr. Fahad Raza from the Ministry of Commerce for obviously, you know, they have given an in-depth analysis of trade with Sri Lanka. But being in the country, I think maybe I can provide some unique perspective to the opportunities that and what we've been doing so far, which can benefit our exporters. Let me try sharing my screen. Is it visible to you, Ji?
Ji, it is. It is. Please continue.
Thank you. So quite a few points have been overlapped, but I think from a marketing point of view, it's important that you have the market in your mind. What kind of market opportunities does Sri Lanka present? What are the intricacies that we have to look at? And especially in the post-COVID scenario, what do we have to do to integrate ourselves within this market and engage more deeply? So my presentation will follow. I'll try to skip through the things that have been repeated. I wanted to give an overview of the Sri Lankan economy, and then we'll talk about the Pakistan-Sri Lanka bilateral trade and what interventions we have made to further enhance this trade, and what sectors we have identified on the basis of data analysis on local demand that we can talk about, and we'll have some recommendations, and we'll talk about the challenges also that are being faced on ground. So this slide has already been repeated. I just wanted to add that Sri Lanka is an upper middle income country, and it has a higher GDP per capita at $4,102 US as per the 2019 data from the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. And obviously, being a higher income country compared to Pakistan, the population is just 1/10 actually. So as we can see, the productivity is quite high in the country. So and if the productivity is high, people are getting better income, and obviously there's a consumer demand for many products. I wanted to touch upon the impact of COVID-19 on the Sri Lankan economy. As we already know, unfortunately, Sri Lanka underwent a horrific trauma last year. And called the Easter Sunday attacks, in which they lost many precious lives. And that really proved to be it affected their economy very adversely. They were having, since the civil war ended in 2009, they were growing at a rate of 5 to 6% per year. And in 2019, that went to, the GDP growth rate went to an 18-year low, and it just grew at 2.7%. So considering that perspective and adding the COVID-19 pandemic, which the country has been facing since, I think the first case was identified in February this year, and उसके साथ मिला लें अगर आप ये दोनों चीज़ों को, तो the Easter Sunday attacks and the effect on the economy, and then the COVID proved to be a really a bad thing for the local economy here. And there was a sharp decline in revenue. As you know, Sri Lanka is mainly dependent on tourism, revenue from tourism, apparel, and tea. And because of the pandemic and the way that this country is placed geographically, they had to take some very strict actions. They had to impose a curfew, an island-wide police-enforced curfew across the island. And obviously that affected their production levels and manufacturing in the country. The tourists had to be discouraged from coming to the country. And since March till now, we do not have any tourists coming to Sri Lanka. So considering that 45 to 50% of their revenue comes from tourism, and they're very much into high-end apparel and tea production, that has really affected their overall growth. And this has added to their debt to GDP ratio problem as well, which has grown to 96%. And due to these conditions, the government had to impose a blanket complete ban on non-essential imports. And this was in March this year. And across 156 HS headings, they had to restrict non-essential imports except for fuel and medicines. And that really affected Pakistan's exports as well, which I'll talk about. We'll do the monthly analysis for this year, and I'll talk more about that in detail. Sri Lanka did a tremendous job at controlling community transmission of COVID-19. And for 150 days, there was no community spread in Sri Lanka after the curfew was lifted. But since October, there has been another outbreak, and this is a very rapidly transmitting wave that we're experiencing currently. Again, some parts of the country have been under curfew. Colombo and the Western province here, which has most of the manufacturing and industrial facilities, that went under curfew. So things are a little uncertain. And considering that Sri Lanka remains highly dependent on international debt, it becomes very vulnerable for the country to overcome such external shocks. Talking about the Pakistan-Sri Lanka trade relations, we have very good trade relations. I mean, at the diplomatic level first, I would like to talk about that, because pre-2005, when the FTA was signed, our relations were basically in political and defense cooperation. And that has really grown in multiple facets after the 2005 PSFTA. Our relationship is based on mutual respect, we enjoy a lot of goodwill in the political setup here. And our relations date back to from 1948. But this FTA has really provided a tool for us to engage deeply in the economic engagement as well. And as you can see, and it was already discussed, that our trade really triggered after 2005, not only for Pakistan, but also for Sri Lanka. Total bilateral trade stood less than $100 million before 2005. And that has grown, as you can see, $200 million before 2005. And that has grown at least doubled in volume to 416 in 2018. And in 2019, we were going to cross that as well. But then with the Easter Sunday attacks and then, following in 2020, we were having some issues with exporting to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is the 14th largest export destination in the world and the 3rd largest market in South Asia for Pakistani products. Pakistan is Sri Lanka's 2nd largest trading partner in South Asia. So we really need to increase our ranking and our competitive edge in the as placing ourselves as an import destination for Sri Lanka. If we look at the bilateral trade since 2010, this is a 10-year data from 2010 to 19, we can see that our exports have been quite high, but they have been fluctuating as well. And they follow the trend, जो कि पाकिस्तान के overall export volume का trend रहता है, that is being followed. 2011-12 में, you remember that Pakistan crossed 25 billion US dollar mark for the first time. And that is apparent in Sri Lanka also. And one thing I would like to point out is that the trade mission in Sri Lanka has organized 3 editions of single country exhibitions in 2016, 17, and 18. And you can really see the impact of those exhibitions. It was probably the largest international exhibition ever organized by Trade Development Authority of Pakistan. And they deserve due credit for that. And that really enhanced our exports to Sri Lanka. So you can see following 2016, our exports enhanced to 269 million, almost to 70 million. And then further went up to 356 million in 2018. And similarly, Sri Lanka's exports to Pakistan also increased because as business linkages grew, as traveling between the countries grew, as further collaborations in different sectors grew, we can really see the impact of those exhibitions. And with that data in mind, I think it really works here that, the trade promotion tools, such as exhibitions, delegations, they really work in this market. 2019, we have come down to 323 million. Unfortunately, we were on an upward trend in January and February this year. I'll explain the reasons behind that more in detail. This is a slide that has already been shared with Mr. Fahad. I would like to point out that Portland cement is our largest export to Sri Lanka, considering the data of 2019 and 20, followed by cotton, onions. We have done an excellent job in export of onions because before 2019, only about $3 or $4 million worth of onions were being exported to Sri Lanka. And Pakistan really took this opportunity because Sri Lanka mainly sources its onions from, big onions specifically, from India. And there was an export ban in India, and we really capitalized on that market. And for the first time, Pakistan's onion exports to Sri Lanka crossed 3 million. And so they currently stand at 26.43 million, which is a great thing. And we have found that market acceptability in this. I think we need to keep pushing for that. Unfortunately, there was an export ban imposed by Pakistan due to food security reasons already explained by Mr. Fahad. And that is why we again had to sort of back away from this market. Potatoes are one of our traditional goods to Sri Lanka. I think we cater to about three quarters of the demand, import demand of potatoes in Sri Lanka. Similarly, in pharmaceuticals, that is a very growing field. We talk about more in pharmaceuticals. I also saw that there were some questions on how to enhance our trade in exports in pharmaceuticals, and what sort of opportunities are being presented in the Sri Lankan market. So betel leaves, on the Sri Lankan side, we can see that betel leaves have been the consistent high value exports from Sri Lanka to Pakistan, and they have only grown with time. And similarly, MDF, a much less volume of export, but traditionally we have been importing MDF, natural rubber, coconuts, different sort of nuts, fresh or dried, and some articles of clothing also. We have, as Mr. Fahad mentioned, we've given special concessions on that. Nuts and dried fruits and different products made out of coconut also. So these are the priority sectors that we have identified as a trade mission for Pakistani exporters in Sri Lanka. This analysis is based on, we've chosen these sectors based on our analysis of how much does Pakistan export in these sectors to Sri Lanka? What are Sri Lanka's world imports in these sectors? And what is the potential considering Pakistan's exports, total exports to the world? What potential are we missing in Sri Lanka in these particular sectors? So what I've done is I've divided them into traditional, non-traditional, and service sectors. So in the traditional sectors, we have Portland cement. Traditionally, Pakistan has been, as I mentioned, last year, Pakistan exported almost $46 million US worth of Portland cement, mainly focused in the bagged cement category. But we have made some interventions, and we have seen that that trend has changed to bulk cement also, and also clinkers. So this is a very good sort of a change, diversification in our products. We need to further diversify because India is currently our largest competitor in this category. We need to do more research and development and take up more products that cater to the Sri Lankan market. There's a lot of reconstruction and recovery going on in the country. There's a lot of infrastructural development. It has slowed down recently, but it's still there. And there will be a lot of demand for construction materials. Textile products mainly, we have exported cotton fabric, woven and non-woven, denim fabric, and which serve as raw materials for Sri Lanka's apparel industry. Sri Lanka has one of the most forward-looking apparel manufacturing in the world. It is one of the largest sectors, and Pakistan has been providing raw materials for them for a long time. So we need to further diversify. We need to look at our textile value chain and how we can synergize with Sri Lanka in optimizing our own textile products as well, and adding value to our products, because the productivity in the textile industry is very high in Sri Lanka. And so that is another sector that has a lot of potential. Rice, we mainly export long grain rice to Sri Lanka, basmati, mainly basmati and non-basmati as well. Rice used to be Pakistan's top export to Sri Lanka in 2010, and we used to export $48 million US, but that has really come down recently, and last year it was only $10 million US. We have faced a few issues in the duty-free quota provided to Pakistan, which is of 6,000 metric ton. But over the years, we have seen that Pakistan has utilized this quota and has even exported above this quota. So there's a potential to increase the quota and to do away with administrative issues and some hurdles that our exporters are facing in exporting rice to Sri Lanka. Pharmaceuticals is a huge market in Sri Lanka, because almost 90% of pharmaceutical products in Pakistan, in Sri Lanka, are imported. And the government is very much focused on domestic production. And for that, they are encouraging joint ventures with local partners and to start producing pharmaceutical products within the country, because it is very heavy on their national exchequer to, import pharmaceuticals. I believe it is around 1,200 million rupees worth of imports every year. So they would like to at least cater to about 60% of that to be produced domestically. So pharmaceuticals, 53% of the market in this sector is captured by India, and Pakistan really needs to market its pharmaceuticals as high quality, as competitively priced, and to cater to the local demand here. Although both Pakistan and India face zero rated tariff in Sri Lankan market, it indicates that there's a higher cost of production of pharmaceutical products in Pakistan. As I already said, that this is one sector that we will take forward. We will do a series of webinars as long as we're living in the new normal, so we have to make use of the virtual world. We will do B2Bs, we'll do a series of seminars, especially on pharmaceuticals, so that our exporters and manufacturers are able to take advantage of the local policies of the government here. Similarly, in services sectors, we have joined hands in construction industry. As I already mentioned, that there's a lot of infrastructural development going on in Sri Lanka, and for that, especially in not only in commercial construction but also housing and construction also. So there is a small presence of Pakistani companies who are providing these services, but there's potential to enhance that also. I already discussed textile processing and productivity. We'll take our trade bodies in Pakistan on board and really come up with a strategy on how Pakistan can benefit and learn from Sri Lanka in, amplifying our own textile products as well, and making use of Sri Lanka's expertise, and also how can we synergize our value chains and increase global exports of both the countries. Tourism and hospitality is another sector which has very high potential. We in the Pakistan High Commission are trying to promote our Buddhist heritage in Pakistan, and we are trying to form some sort of collaboration between our local tour operators and the Sri Lankan tour operators, and get their religious leaders and the media on board to come and see the Buddhist heritage in Pakistan, which is thousands of years old. And it is actually the second most holiest Buddhist place in the world. And the relics and the heritage that we have, the Sri Lankans are missing out on that. So we are also looking at tourism development. Sri Lanka is one of the market leaders in tourism sector, and we are learning from them. We are trying to sort of collaborate with our particular sectors that are dealing, and the government and private stakeholders that are dealing with tourism in Pakistan. Similarly, in information technology, Pakistan and Sri Lanka roundabout have the same sort of total exports of information technology goods, services. And so there's a chance to collaborate in that sector as well, with the high productivity in the on the Sri Lankan side, and the management skills and the operational skills on Pakistan side. We can do wonders in this sector also. There's a small presence of Pakistani companies in Sri Lanka already in the IT sector and the BPO sector also, but that needs to be enhanced. Some non-traditional sectors that we've identified are surgical and dental instruments. Pakistan is already exporting a high volume of surgical and dental instruments, and they can cater to the Sri Lankan market as well. Iron and steel products, we're trying to get them the right sort of concessions so that we have very high quality iron and steel products that need to penetrate into the Sri Lankan market. Electrical fans, somebody was asking about electrical fans. There is a demand for electrical fans, but I think We need to have more business-to-business linkages between our associations here, between the importers here and our association and exporters in Pakistan. Dates is another sector that I would say it's a success story that we are trying to take forward. Dates from Pakistan started coming in. From Pakistan to Sri Lanka started coming in 2019. TDAP and PH-Tech in Pakistan facilitated a delegation of dates importers from Sri Lanka. And they were really able to see right from our production and to value addition and packaging, our entire value and supply chain of dates production in Pakistan. And we have seen that dates have started coming into Pakistan, especially fresh dates. There is not a huge market for dry dates in Sri Lanka, but fresh dates, last year it was about 319,000, about 0.3 million US dollars worth of imports. Quite less compared to our capacity, but considering that the total demand for dates in Sri Lanka is about 6,000 metric tons, so it's a good start. This year, we have taken on board all the leading importers of dates in Sri Lanka, and we have tried to facilitate our business-to-business linkages. And very recently, they've placed orders and the consignments have reached Sri Lanka. So that's a good success stories. In collaboration with TDAP, we'll do more market promotion here. We'll use dates as a trade diplomacy tool also. And there is a plan to send samples to the leading importers and also to the potential buyers. Men's apparel. Sri Lanka imports a high sort of, it's almost about 111 million US dollars worth of men's apparel that Sri Lanka is importing. So, but we have very high exports in this sector across the world. But we are not exporting to Sri Lanka in this category. So this is a non-traditional sector that we can look into. Paper and paperboard, leather is one of our leading sectors. Mr. Fahad already mentioned wheat and maize, but wheat and also sugar, there's a very high demand for import of wheat and sugar in Sri Lanka, but we are restrained due to our own food security issues. So ever since I've joined my office here, our strategy has been to enhance exports through two ways. Basically, one is the trade diplomacy. Our priority right now is that we need to retain our exports at pre-COVID levels. As I already mentioned, we were surpassing 2019 figures in January and February, and then we kind of took a hit in March. And that is our main effort. So how do we do this? We would like, we will be doing it through removal of, we'll be engaging with the government here to remove import restrictions and non-tariff barriers. Then we would like to look at the rationalization of domestic taxes. And these are real life examples that I will share with you in a bit, where we have, as Mr. Fahad already mentioned, we have engaged with the government on our cement exports and on our rice exports. So we should be able to bear the fruit of that in the coming time. Secondly, as I already mentioned, that non-traditional exports have to be focused on in the trade promotion, and dates and electrical fans are on our priority. Sector-specific virtual business forums and delegations, because for the foreseeable future, it looks very hard to have a huge trade exhibition considering the health hazards that we're currently facing, and to take delegations from both countries either way. So what we're trying to do is make optimum use of the virtual world, and this webinar being part of that series. What we're trying to do is engage with all the relevant stakeholders, both on the Sri Lankan and Pakistani side, and basically promote, not only promote, but build awareness that what are the benefits under the Pakistan-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, as the Honorable CG also mentioned that many people don't even know what are the benefits. So that's a huge hazard. That's a huge constraint if people don't even know what benefits they can get under this agreement. So our current focus is to build up that knowledge and to then move into sector-specific business forums. So we have made a calendar, a series of events catering to the high potential sectors which we just discussed, and we'll do that in the next 6 months. Collaboration between trade organizations is also a huge agenda, because currently we do not have many MOUs between our trade bodies on both sides. And that really needs to be enhanced so that the private sector can take a lead in promoting trade between the countries as well. So I just want to briefly talk about the interventions that we've taken. As I already mentioned, that there was a blanket and complete ban on non-essential imports in Sri Lanka. So in April this year, they banned the bagged cement, which is 50 kg packaging and less, not bulk and not clinker. So in bagged cement, Pakistan has a 55% market share in Sri Lanka. And so it disproportionately sort of affected us. We immediately took up the case with the Sri Lankan government here, and they have been very, they've considered it very positively. And that ban was removed. And I'll show you in the next slide how just because of that ban, our exports to Sri Lanka got really affected in the months following in March, April, and May. So that is one intervention that we made, because cement being our biggest export to Sri Lanka, and obviously very sudden diversification is not possible with our exporters as well, because if they were primarily exporting bagged cement, it's not very easy to shift to bulk cement and to clinkers, especially considering the storage and the manufacturing facilities in Sri Lanka. They only can cater to about 11% of the local demand in Sri Lanka, the domestic producers. And they do not have the paraphernalia to, get bagged cement, then convert it into bulk cement, or get clinker on very, for Pakistan also to export clinker on in a sudden change of, situation, and cater to that demand locally. So we really, that was our priority, to really get that ban removed from bagged cement, and the host government has been very considerate in that. Secondly was the rationalization of domestic tax on imported cement and clinkers. So after that, as I mentioned, there was a lot of restriction on imports. There was almost a 211% duty applied on cement imports following the removal of the ban. And that created a lot of issues here, because importers had placed orders for cement after the removal of the ban, and so many of their consignments got stuck on at the port here, because the onus of the domestic tax lay on the importers, and they were unable to, due to such a high cost, sudden 211% increase in domestic tax, they were not able to clear those consignments. So again, we took up the matter with the Sri Lankan government, and although we completely understood the economic conditions under which such decisions were taken, it was of utmost importance that they were briefed on why this would hamper exports from Pakistan, and how exports from Pakistan are actually helping Sri Lanka also in keeping the cost down, and because Pakistan's per ton cost of cement exports from Pakistan are very reasonable and very competitive, considering our other competitors in this market. So that was an important thing that we had to undertake. Third is the streamlining of basmati rice quota under PSFTA. As you already know, that Pakistan has been given a tariff rate quota for duty-free concession of 6,000 metric ton of rice under the PSFTA. And for this, there were certain conditions that needed to be complied with that were put in place by the Sri Lankan government to get benefit of this quota. And unfortunately, last year, this quota came under a lot of problems because we were not able to clear, importers here were not able to clear the basmati rice exports from Pakistan. And that was some out of the FTA protocols, inspections were undertaken, and we had till now actually, we are still trying to engage with the government to release those consignments, because that really hampers the exporters' confidence. And when something is added to the already approved process, or is added to an already streamlined procedure, it becomes really tough for the exporters and the importers to carry out trading activities. So we've taken this matter up with the government, and I'm pleased to announce that the government has decided to streamline the basmati rice quota, and they have given the approval only to government bodies in Sri Lanka to import rice under this quota from Pakistan. So that is being shared with our stakeholders in Pakistan. So from this year onwards, they have identified a particular government body that is only approved for import of rice from Sri Lanka, from Pakistan. In the previous year, in 2019, that quota was bifurcated between private and public sector importers. And maybe that sort of created an issue because it was a new guideline, and it was something new for the importers here as well. Although from our side, it wasn't an issue, maybe from the administrative point of view in Sri Lanka, it became an issue, and that is why the consignment still remained under detention. So that is another thing that we've taken up. Hopefully this year and the next year, we'll see much improvement in rice exports from Pakistan, as that is not only one of our largest exports, but used to be one of our largest exports to Sri Lanka as well. So here, if we look at Pakistan's pre-COVID and current exports to Sri Lanka, I've made a comparison of 2019 and 2020 data. So the orange is in 2019 and green is in 2020. So if we look at January and February, that really, we were surpassing our 2019 export levels. And we were on the path. If that had continued and the global situation hadn't changed, it is likely that we would have surpassed our previous year's export figures to Sri Lanka. So as we can see that in May, the import restriction on our cement affected our exports to Sri Lanka, and cement got badly hit, and that is why in May you can see that they have come down to 10.59 million only. But with our intervention, I think we've seen an improvement in June, July, August, and September. There has been fluctuation, but considering our previous levels, I think we have, in various months, we have surpassed the 2019 levels. So let's hope that the momentum keeps on increasing. And these are some challenges we've already discussed in all our, the previous speakers have discussed challenges. There's a low trade complementarity, which, so this means that Sri Lanka and Pakistan have the same sort of export portfolio, and like apparel and clothing accessories. And we have lack of sufficient business-to-business linkages. Trade disputes have arisen due to non-payment issues. And there's been some frequent changes in the tariff structures on both sides, and imposition of domestic taxes. Like we were speaking about potatoes, which have a 1,000 metric ton concession in duty-free concession in Sri Lanka. But when potatoes come and various other commodities, when they come into Sri Lanka, they are subjected to a special commodity levy, which dilutes our margin of preference also. So that we have also taken up with the government here. There's high cost of travel between Pakistan and Sri Lanka, which not only affects tourism, but also business linkages. And coming towards the opportunities, I would just like to say that we need to build upon our goodwill and increase our trade from both sides. And we need to increase the scope of our FTA into services, investment, and customs cooperation as well. And the trade dispute mechanism needs to be also strengthened. And similarly, as I mentioned, that due to the low trade complementarity, the opportunity is to get into more synergizing of value chains and joint ventures, especially in textiles, cements, pharmaceuticals, information and communication technology. And I think I'll end my part at this slide. And thank you for the opportunity for sharing my experience, given to me for sharing my experience. I hope my part was a bit helpful and kind of built up on the last two speakers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have a couple of questions for you as well.
Sure.
Can you kindly let us know whether the pharmaceutical, regarding the pharma sector, whether the finished or semi-finished goods are, have the potential for Sri Lankan market?
Both, actually. The semi-finished goods also have potential in Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm. And the cosmetic sector as well. Can you please specify whether there is a registration or certification process that is required to enter the cosmetic sector of Sri Lanka from Pakistani side?
There certainly is certification required. There's a national body called the National Medicine Regulatory Authority, NMRA, and cosmetic and pharmaceutical products need registration from that body. So yeah, so in cosmetics, although there's a potential here, but more potential in Sri Lanka itself is getting into Ayurvedic, and you know, it's traditionally been into Ayurvedic cosmetics and medicines. And if we can market ourselves like that, and you know, sort of join hands with them, I think we'll have more potential in the market also.
Focusing more on the herbal products as well, that is?
Yes, herbal is
right.
Quite big here.
And
yes.
Can you please let us know about handicrafts from Pakistan? Because since previously there were these TDAP organized single country exhibition in Sri Lanka, and people have a very positive feedback about it. But
Yes.
we don't see that kind of an event happening really soon in the wake of COVID. So could you kindly let us know about the handicraft thing that people can, you know, the opportunity they can
we can definitely connect them with the relevant importers here, and people who are interested in getting handicrafts for Pakistan. They are very well liked here. Handicrafts are carpets also, and but we'll certainly get them connected. So if somebody wants to get an importers list from our trade mission, they can send me an email. We'll try to sort out according to their profiles. We'll sort out the relevant importers and we'll share the list with them also.
Right. And yes, many of our participants are requesting for importers lists for their particular products. So we've shared your email address with them. So I guess you'll probably share the list with them after the presentation.
Yes, we'll do that. Every day we get quite a few inquiries, and we are more than happy to share the relevant information.
And we again have sports goods with us. People want to export sports goods from Pakistan to Sri Lanka. So as the Honorable Consul General indicated, can you please elaborate upon it a bit so that for their satisfaction, whether you're working on it?
Right. So the Consul General was very correct in pointing out that with the new government, there's a lot more focus on sports. They have the youngest minister, the Sri Lankan minister who's ever served that ministry. And he's very keen on, you know, inculcating that culture in the country. Rugby, football, cricket, these are the main, you know, sports being played in Sri Lanka. And we've met with the relevant associations, the players' associations also, and they've shown interest in, you know, getting sports goods from Pakistan. This not only includes the also include the professional costumes and, the paraphernalia for sports, sporting activities. So there is a lot of focus, but there's also, the government's focus is also shifting to local production of sports goods. So we'll have to see in the coming days what sort of policy comes up. We can, Pakistan being an expert in that field, we can possibly have some joint ventures and, increase both our countries' potential in production of the sports goods as well as exports. So I think that's an up and coming area, and we'll keep an eye on that and inform our participants more.
Thank you very much. One last question. What a little bit about the potential in trade and services, the IT related services that can be provided from Pakistan or exported from Pakistan to Sri Lanka. Is there any potential for that?
The government of Sri Lanka is, in the public sector, there's a lot of opportunity for Pakistani companies to compete, because the government here takes up tenders. There's a serious undertaking for digitization of public services, and there are many projects that are being posted for international tendering also. So that is one sector where Pakistan can make its presence felt. And we also need to join hands and there are a few BPO companies here which have Pakistani presence. We also need to, we could manage the companies here. We could have subsidiaries of Pakistani companies here in local partnership. And we also can, there are various products such as mobile apps that Pakistan can compete in and, cater to the local government, demand here. So these are some areas. We are going to hold a business forum on information and communication technologies exports also. So we'll connect the relevant stakeholders in Pakistan and in Sri Lanka. And, they can identify for themselves also that what kind of areas that they can collaborate in. Because in Sri Lanka, exports of IT is around $1 million. Similarly, in Pakistan, it's not too much of a gap, considering that we have many more companies engaged in the IT sector. But that means that the productivity is higher on the Sri Lankan side. So we can, take advantage of the productivity here, and we can bring in our own management operations here and work together to for increasing both our exports. So that is an area which we are very keen on in developing. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Thank you very much, Asma. Thank you.
And
thank you. We would like to now conclude the session. Madam, your remarks, please.
Very interesting presentation, to say the least. While I would like to thank everybody who's joined us today, I can also see that there are a lot of queries in the chat boxes. There were a lot of people who wanted to ask questions. That too, despite the fact, as our Trade and Investment Officer, Ms. Asma, very rightly pointed out, that interestingly, although both Pakistan and Sri Lanka have a lot of commonalities in their export basket, which leaves, a slim room for compatibility. And despite that fact, there is so much interest on both the sides to have deeper trade relationship. I think that's very, very heartening to see. And as she also mentioned, we can probably go for joint ventures where their productivity is higher. There are some areas where our productivity is higher. So I think we should be looking for unique sort of combinations where both the countries can have their optimum benefits from both the sides. On this note, I would like to thank you, everybody who's joined us today. Thank you very much, Asma. Very good to see you. Fahad, and to His Excellency, the Honorable Consul General. Thank you, and we will be hoping to have more of these such sessions in future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all of you, for participating. Thanks a lot.